latest news. A lot's happened since the last update in April. In particular, I'm going to bring everyone up to speed on the closure of 2 Golden Visa programs neighbouring Portugal. Both the Spanish and the Maltese Golden Visa programs coming to an end. One of which, a little bit of a surprise. Of course, we've got the Portuguese elections coming up on the 18th of May in 10 days' time, which may have an impact, of course, on the Golden Visa program, which we'll cover off as well. Following the news, we'll go into some Golden Visa basics to give you a good understanding of what the program is, if it is the first time or you're at the kind of initial stages of your research. We'll have a look at the timeline, the process, what's involved, what to expect. Of course, latest news around kind of processing times and AIMA. And yeah, other than that, we'll have a look at the latest investment criteria, which hasn't changed. There is one slight variation from last month, but in the main, the criteria are very much the same. I will have a look at how you can make an investment at the moment and qualify for an investment of 500,000 with only 325,000 of your own capital. And lastly, I'm going to touch on this evening as well the NHR tax regime as well. It's a very exciting topic, so I'll be sure not to go into too much detail and get too excited talking about tax, but it is important for some people that may be listening at the moment that have plans to actually become tax resident in Portugal. So yeah, I'll bring you up to speed on that, and yes, I'll then give you a couple of examples of some of the top investment picks at the moment that would qualify for the Golden Visa. But other than that, let's make a start. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Jason Swan. I'm one of the senior partners for Holborn Assets, and if you've not joined before, Holborn Assets are actually a wealth management practice. They've been around now for over 30 years, give or take. We actually manage over $3 billion of client assets between 26 offices worldwide. I live here in Portugal. I've been in Portugal now for 4 years, give or take. My Portuguese has not improved whatsoever since the last update, but still remains on my radar. Previous to Portugal, I was in Spain for 5 years as well, and if you haven't already noticed from, I think still a bit of a Manchester accent, I'm originally from the UK in the north of Manchester as well, but I specialise within European, both financial planning, but also in particular the Golden Visa programs, which of course are investment visas. And yeah, so far, well, personally, I've now submitted over 300 successful applications for Portugal's Golden Visa. We manage, well, we've had a 100% success rate as a company, and of course we are the best or highest rated company as far as our customer service that we offer, which you'll hear a little bit more about as we go through. But enough about me. If you want to check out some more details, please have a look at jsprive.com. And as a company, the service that we offer is very much a all-encompassing service, really, to help our clients achieve whether it be residency or citizenship by way of investment. For Portugal, the service consists of everything that you need, and that includes starting the process with applying for Portuguese tax numbers, quickly followed by setting up your Portuguese bank account, the collection of course, all the documents involved. There'll be an investment provider, there'll be the tax office for your annual tax declaration, there'll be the, of course, dealing with the borders agency of AIMA, and lots of things to look forward to. But you have myself and my team that facilitate all of those different moving parts, and we try to do as much of the kind of heavy lifting as we can to try and make the process as stress-free as possible. You just kind of throw all the work onto me, or at least my team, and yeah, we will, like I say, we'll try and get you on your way to Portugal as soon as we can. If you've not come across myself before or Holborn or in any way, just check out Google, type my name into Google, have a look at some of our recent reviews, and if you have a look at Trustpilot, you'll see now over 2,000 reviews from our existing clients as well. So there you go. That is us. That is me. That is Holborn. And without further ado, we're of course going to focus on the Portugal Golden Visa program. If you're not necessarily set on just Portugal and are simply considering a move to a new country, you may want to talk about one of our other citizenship or residency programs, the list for which seems to be getting a little bit smaller these days. My very poor Microsoft Paint skills, as you can see here, taking out some recent programs, but currently, Portugal is by far the most popular citizenship program as it stands, but there are, of course, international programs and also other routes into Europe. But for tonight, it is my favourite, and that is Portugal. So first of all, let me bring everyone up to speed on what's been happening over the past 4 weeks. I've had some very worried clients calling over the past few days following the recent news of the Malta Golden Visa program having been closed. Not too long after the Spanish Golden Visa program closed about this time last month. And of course, that leaves now Portugal as the only country in Europe that is still offering European passports to investors that don't actually live in Europe. Now, I'll give a bit of commentary on this because this isn't cause for concern. I think with these programs closing, the spotlight now will be ever more on Portugal. I mean, we saw back in 2023, the Portuguese program very nearly closed, and generally due to rapidly increasing house prices. And ultimately, the program didn't close. There was a last-minute change, and ultimately, this removed property investment from the investment criteria. However, Spain went all the way through and closed the program entirely back in April for all types of investment. And Malta, well, Malta's program has actually been deemed by the European court as completely illegal. And it's very much different to the process with Portugal. But through Malta, you could effectively buy a European passport, which, as you can imagine, has attracted investment and people that Europe doesn't necessarily want. And it has been seen in a disfavourable light. So the program has been closed, but don't see that as any reflection on the Portugal program. Of course, Portugal, to actually get a passport, you actually still have to abide by the rules of residency. And you have to, of course, maintain those rules for at least 5 years before you can apply for a passport. So quite wildly different to being able to just purchase a passport. However, of course, it does reduce the options now available for those looking to achieve citizenship in Europe. And as I say, Portugal now is the last one that offers passport without having to live in the country. There are other Golden Visa programs, such as the Greek Golden Visa, the Italian Golden Visa, but you have to, there is an element of having to live in those countries to apply for a passport. But otherwise, yeah, that's what's happening. So kind of news outside of Portugal on that aspect. As far as processing times at the moment, we have seen a pretty drastic uplift in applications this year, especially from America. I don't know what happened in November last year, but it does seem to have caused over a 300% uplift in applications, and yeah, it was, I would say, the majority, by quite some way, the majority of applications now coming from the US. But processing times, that the fastest time we've had an application done this year, we had a case that was submitted in February. It was approved in April, and now the whole family's booked in for biometrics in July. So super fast turnaround time, but it does seem to vary. The average kind of processing time is closer to around 18 months at the moment, but we'll come on to that more shortly. But all in all, the Portugal program remains unfazed at this stage. Just briefly staying on the topic of American investors, and I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that the exchange rate, of course, to euro has gone against you over the past few weeks, and we're now seeing, of course, the actual cost of a Golden Visa being about 10% more than what it was now back earlier in 2024. And there are, this is a key consideration. Of course, it is a subjective matter as to whether or not that trend will continue, or if the dollar will improve. The kind of general experts on the ground tend to guide that it is a systematic weakening of the dollar over the next year or two. From I won't say any names, but we do believe that the dollar will continue to weaken. So just be mindful that as that happens, that may result in an increased cost of an investment, of course, which must be in euros for the visa. If you are exchanging from euros to dollars, it may be worth considering utilising some form of forward contract. Of course, the process of starting and investing takes a bit of time, and if you do want to take out the risk of further currency fluctuations, there is the option to effectively book your currency in advance. So at least you know exactly what it's going to look like when you do need to make the conversion later on. But otherwise, yeah, it's good to get some advice on that. Currency is very difficult to predict at the best of times, but if you do want to speak to one of our currency experts, then of course, please do ask, and we'll be happy to do that. But otherwise, I hope for, of course, everyone from America that's joining today that reverses and things to become a little bit cheaper for you. But we'll have to wait and see on that front. And lastly, some positive news. It's kind of sounding a bit negative there, wasn't it? I don't often say positive news when it comes to elections in Portugal, but this is the latest trend for the elections, which are due on the 18th of May, which by my calculations is in about 10 days' time. I don't particularly follow politics all too closely. However, I do, of course, stay abreast of what may affect my clients and, of course, our business. And the Golden Visa program may be impacted by the elections on the 18th. One party is very much pro Golden Visa and overseas investment, or that the other is quite the opposite. And at the moment, the party in the lead that is most likely to win the election is pro Golden Visa. And dare I say it, that may, if we're lucky, see some more generous investment criteria, perhaps. Dare I say it, maybe the return of property investment. I wouldn't get too excited on that just yet, because property prices are still rapidly increasing, which is a problem here in Portugal. But yeah, as it stands, that new government may work to the benefit of the Golden Visa, but we'll have to wait and see. If it does go the other way, there is current talks of the minimum stay in Portugal increasing from 7 days up to as much as 6 months, very similar to the likes of the D7 and the D8. And there is, of course, the possibility of the program closing in its entirety. So we'll have to wait and see. I will know, of course, a bit more after the 18th. Don't panic at this stage. Even if there are changes, it will take some time before they can come into written law. However, yeah, the important date to remember is the date of your submission of the visa. So if the program does close, or should I say when it closes, probably will close over the next 1 to 2 years at best. As long as you've submitted your application before any law changes, then you will be protected by the laws in play on that date, and you'll be grandfathered into the program. But of course, we do have to get that submitted beforehand, and we do need a little bit of time to get everything ready to submit. But otherwise, there you go. There is the political lowdown of Portugal. And on that, I'll just say that if you would like to stay up to date with, of course, key updates like this, both from myself and other counterparts within the industry and some of Portugal's top law firms, so you can now subscribe to the WhatsApp channel. You can scan that QR code, and that will take you through. So I'll try to keep up to date as much as I can, as far as anything relevant to the Golden Visa program. And if after you've watched me for an hour this evening, you just can't get enough and you want to watch me some more, you can now subscribe to the YouTube channel, where a recording of this evening's session will be uploaded. And over the next 12 months, I'm going to look to try and publish as much kind of educational content as possible. Again, linking primarily to the Portugal Golden Visa, but also generally around moving into Europe as well. And you'll find me on YouTube at the Golden Visa Guy. Now, let's get stuck in. So the Golden Visa, what is it? It is a 2-year visa. It is a 2-year VIP pass to live, work, or simply sunbathe, however you wish, in Portugal for up to 365 days per year. And you can renew that visa every 2 years for as long as you like, if you wish. But after 5 years have passed, you can then apply for a passport. And realised I've still got Malta on here. I'll have to take that out now. Thought I'd made those necessary amendments. But Portugal, as I mentioned before, is now the only country in Europe that allows you to apply for a passport without having to live in Europe. As long as you can be in Portugal for at least 2 weeks every 2 years, that is all that is needed as far as you stay. You also need a clean criminal record. And of course, you need to invest as per the government's rules. But otherwise, the minimum stay allows you to continue living exactly where you are. And the majority of those that are looking at the Golden Visa compared to others is generally those that are not necessarily wanting to kind of move to Portugal right now, but are more thinking of perhaps a plan B. I'd say that on almost every meeting at the moment, a plan B is the kind of key phrase, really. If you decide to move in the future, or should you need to move in the future, you have that kind of get out of jail card to quickly move to Portugal. And of course, once you get the passport, you can then live in any European country without any restrictions at all. Kind of like getting 27 passports all at the same time. But yeah, it is Europe's most successful, tried and tested path to citizenship. And like I said, there's been now over 20,000 applications submitted. There is a 97% success rate from visa to citizenship in Portugal as well. It is not a subjective application. It doesn't come down to the mood of the person that interviews you on the day. As long as you follow the rules, then it's a pretty clear path to citizenship. So there you go. That's what we're here to talk about. Now, as a Golden Visa holder, you don't just get the right to live in Portugal, which I think is the best part, but of course you also get access to the healthcare system. The healthcare system, I have some clients that do it just to get access to free healthcare, especially compared to the cost of healthcare in the States and other parts of the world. Portugal has one of the best rated healthcare systems anywhere in the world. The whole family also gets access to European education as well. And Portugal continues to offer some tax incentives as well for new residents for the first 10 years that you live in Portugal. And all this only having to spend 7 days each year in the country, or technically 14 days every 2 years. If that wasn't enough, I'll give you a quick geography lesson, and you'd be surprised how many people actually, well, I should say, I'm surprised how many people are applying for the visa that have never even been to the country. Quite wild, really, but yeah, I didn't pass. Well, I did pass geography in school, but it wasn't my best subject. But I'll tell you all you need to know. I mean, I'm down here in the south, a little town called Albufeira in the Algarve. The Algarve is formally a little warmer than the rest of Portugal. I think the beaches are a little nicer, but it's my personal opinion. You've got, of course, the capital of Lisbon, which is a whole different world to the south of Portugal. Much more built up, of course, the capital, a lot more cosmopolitan than the south, which is effectively a beach town by comparison. And then you have Porto up in the north, and those three are generally the three kind of most popular destinations for new residents. Of course, you have the island of Madeira, and you may fancy just the inland of Portugal. I read an interesting statistic the other day. I think something like 80% of Portugal is actually just Greenland. It's not actually inhabited, which I wasn't aware of. And you'd be surprised how cheap properties can be as well. You know, if you fancy living with some peace and quiet, maybe on a nice vineyard or perhaps a farmhouse. Still lots of unexplored, well, not unexplored, but uninhabited parts of Portugal to check out. But enough of geography. Let's get into the investment criteria. Okay, so there are currently 5 routes to the Golden Visa program. Option 1, to qualify, if you wish, you can set up a business or you can expand a business into Portugal. And if you create 10 jobs, a nice added benefit of doing that is that you get granted with a Golden Visa. It's probably not the type of thing you want to do for the sake of a visa, you know, setting up a business, but it is possible. You can, if you're feeling generous, you can make a donation to the government. You can donate 500,000 euros into Portugal's research facilities, or you can donate 250,000 into a range of arts and culture projects. If you are not looking to set up a business and employ staff or give your money away, then you have 2 remaining investment options, which consist of some form of investment fund, a venture capital fund, or an investment into a Portuguese company on the basis that that company will create jobs or maintain a certain number of jobs as a result of your investment. And those investment routes can be done from 500,000 euros. We'll go into these more shortly, but those are the 5 categories that you can apply for. Now, as of today's date, there are some slight variations to those thresholds as far as what capital you need to find yourself. Formally, as of today's date, the lowest amount of capital that you need to qualify for a Golden Visa is the donation route of 250,000 euros. As we just looked at, all investment options must have a total of 500,000 invested. However, if of interest, there is 1 or 2 investments that pay an upfront return compared to an annual return. And as of today's date, there is one that pays an upfront return of 101,000 euros, which is effectively 6 years return, all paid up front. And you can actually use that 101 towards the 500,000 that must be invested for the visa. So 399 from your own pocket. Some variations of that as well. You can bolt on a loan facility of 50,000, bringing your capital needed to 349, or 74,000, making the minimum investment capital 325. And yeah, that is the lowest amount of capital as of today's date where you can make a profit as well as qualify for the visa. Hope that's nice and clear. We'll touch on these more shortly. I am going at a relatively fast pace, so please excuse me if I miss anything or you can't quite keep up to tabs with my Manchester accent. But again, any questions that you have on these as we go through, drop them in and we'll fly back to them shortly. Okay, so who qualifies for the Golden Visa? As long as you don't already have a European passport, that's the first box to tick. As long as you have a clean criminal record, or at least a relatively clean criminal record. We have had some success for clients that have had misdemeanors from years gone by, but in the main, you've got to have a pretty squeaky clean criminal record. Of course, we need to make an investment in line with the government's criteria. And the worst part of this deal is that you have to come to Portugal. And you have to be in Portugal for 14 days every 2 years. What a horrible, horrible thing to have to do. But if you can drag yourself to Portugal, this is a subliminal message of what Portugal looks like. This is actually the town of Albufeira, just round the corner from where I'm sat at the moment. And yeah, as long as you can drag yourself out to this place, 14 days, that is pretty much all. There's no other age restrictions, no, you don't have to work in a certain capacity or have a certain income. It's just those 4 rules to have a successful visa. Also, we can add family members, and family members, well, there's one main applicant, and then you can add as many family members as you like. as long as they come under a certain criteria and they can be deemed a dependent. You can include parents above the age of 65, and you can include children up until the age of 21 without any proof of dependency being needed. If you want to add children above the age of 21 or parents below the age of 65, you can do, as long as some form of evidence of dependency can be provided. For children, we usually request proof of enrolment into some form of further education, which will suffice, or proof of financial dependency. And we can also change who is the main applicant as well. So sometimes we could actually maybe put your children as the main applicant and add you as their dependents, and we can then include your grandchildren and things like this. But obviously during a one-to-one meeting, I can assess what your family situation is and kind of talk you through, the best way of structuring an application. I think the company record for most family members on one application so far is 13 family members, all in one single investment. Great value for money. Right, we had step-parents, stepchildren, big family. But yes, so that's it. That is all. And of course, everyone follows the same process, same requirements, same timeline, if they wish to progress towards getting a passport. Busy slide, this one, but it gives an overview on really what we do behind the scenes as we're kind of going through the process. First step, if the Golden Visa is something that you want to find out more about, of course you can get in contact and we'll have a one-to-one meeting, and I can go through any questions that you have. We can go through personalized costings, we can look at different investment options and things like this. Once you make the decision to begin the process, we will apply for your tax numbers, which is step one. Once we have your tax numbers, we can then apply for your bank account. In most cases, you do need to have a Portuguese bank account as part of the process. And whilst we're doing that, we will be collecting the documents that we need for your application, things like passports, proof of address, marriage certificate, birth certificates for children, FBI reports or criminal record certificates. Some documents will need to be apostilled as well, but we'll guide you through all that as we get there. And all being well, it will take us somewhere in the region of, say, 6 to 12 weeks to get everything ready, bank account set up. You'll meet with your attorney, and we'll be ready to make the investment and submit your application. And that is the day, that's the important day, that first of all, the 5-year clock begins to tick to when we can apply then for your passports, which is something that changed last year. It used to be 5 years from when you received the visa, whereas now it's only 5 years from when you apply for the visa. And of course, that is the date that you will be, any changes in law after the submission date will then not affect your path to citizenship. But once we're submitted, then it's just really a waiting game then for your biometrics appointment, which will be the first time and only time you're physically needed in Portugal. Everything until that date is done remotely. But we'll need you to come over to do your fingerprints and your photo. We will accompany you on the day. We'll make sure you're well prepared. We'll help you with the translation. We'll try and keep you entertained. It is a pretty soul-destroying day going to Ema. But it will probably be the worst day of your holiday, but we will be there to try and make it a little bit easier. But once the biometrics have been done, then we'll receive the Visa card, which looks a little bit like this one here down at the bottom. But it's not actually golden, just it's kind of like a grey colour. But I was naively thought it was actually a golden visa. But anyway, so that's the process. That's what we do. Again, I know this sounds like a lot, and there is a lot involved. As part of the process, there is a bank manager, there's the tax office, there's the investment manager, there's the attorneys, there's the accountants. They can be quite overwhelming, but that is what Holborn do. We facilitate all this on your behalf. You have myself as the main point of contact throughout the process, along with a case manager, and it is ourselves that will liaise with all these different parties on your behalf and simply keep you up to date as things progress and get you, of course, on the way to Portugal as quick as we can. And once we have, let's have a recap on the timelines. We're talking up to 3 months to be able to submit your application. On average, again, then we'd expect around 18 months to receive the visa card. It has been a lot longer than that in the past. We have, like I said, we have seen an application this year done in just 6 months, but on the whole, I would set your expectations of around 18 months. The visa card will last for 2 years. So around about year 3, we'll then do the first renewal. And around year 5, we shall do a second renewal. And also, of course, at year 5, we can apply for your passport and permanent residence in Portugal. For some clients, we don't apply for the passport. For example, a Chinese passport doesn't allow for dual nationality, so we would do just the permanent residency perhaps, but in the main, we do both the permanent residency and the passport application, as long as you haven't got yourself in trouble with the law and you've kept a clean criminal record. And the most daunting task, of course, learning some Portuguese. So yeah, learning Portuguese is a bit of a stickler for me. I'll be open on that point that I'm not the best with the languages. I never really picked up Spanish. I embarrassingly speak about 5 words of Portuguese. Very good with numbers, not too good with languages. However, there is some assistance, of course, on hand, and the majority of clients are doing 1 or 2 things. I find they're either doing a crash course with a tutor and kind of passing the test within around about 3 months. It is formally an A2 language exam, which is kind of equivalent of around age 16. Others are actually learning gradually over the visa period and really understanding the language. So it's up to you. There is also a bit of a workaround as well. There is a way where you don't actually need to do the test. The little industry secret here, but there is a way you don't have to do the test, but it does cost a lot of money. And you can do a minimum number of hours study instead of doing the test. And as long as you've done 150 hours, which arguably, if you did 150 hours, you could probably pass the test anyway. But if you're worried about that, then yes, you can pay a premium. I think the course cost about €5,000, so it is a decent whack. But you can kind of keep that in your back pocket just in case you're really struggling to pass the test. But that's it. That's the path. That is all. And once we get the passport, that is mission complete. And you'll officially have the 4th best passport in the world, which will give you access to live without any restrictions in any European country. And for some, and it's actually something that us Brits, and again for the likes of Americans that actually have access, we're fortunate enough to have visa-free access to the majority of the world. But for some nationalities, a big plus is that you actually get access to 190 countries in the world without having to fill out any more visa applications every time that you're on holiday. So that's it, and that's the goal, and that's a permanent status, and that's it. That is the treasure at the end of the rainbow, as I like to say, and what we're working towards. So there you go, piece of cake. Piece of cake. Hopefully that all makes sense so far. Thank you for those that have submitted some questions. We will come up to these shortly. How are we doing for time? Wow, okay, I've been really waffling on myself, so let's pick up some pace, and we'll get some Q&As shortly, and yeah, we'll make sure we try and get through all of those. So briefly, on the tax side of things, this is not applicable unless you are looking to move to Portugal full time, or at least for 6 months of the year. However, if you do plan to move to Portugal and become tax resident here, there is a new version of the famous NHR program that has opened this year that gives the potential of some pretty significant tax savings for new residents for the first 10 years that they live in Portugal. However, you need to invest very specifically or work within a very specific capacity. But if it is something of interest, again, we can talk about this on a one-to-one basis, and we can look at, what income that you have, if it would fall under that tax exemption, and if it's worth applying for LHR. But yeah, it is good and is there for grabs. Now, quick crash course on investments. I'm not going to cover off setting up a business or giving money to the government. I'm just going to cover off the investment routes, which is some form of investment fund or venture capital fund, and of course investing into some Portuguese company and creating jobs. So here is everything that you need to know as far as investment funds. Now, there are, of course, tens of thousands of investment funds in the universe. There is a very small list of those that will qualify for Portugal's Golden Visa. And in order for the fund to qualify, it first of all has to be approved and regulated in Portugal. And the regulatory body here is the CMVM. The fund can no longer invest into real estate, which is a change that happened back in 2023. The fund must invest at least 60% of its capital into Portugal as well. So, for example, you couldn't have a Portuguese investment fund that tracks the US stock market. And likewise, you couldn't have a US fund that invests all the money into Portugal. You've got to have both of those boxes ticked. The investor must invest at least 500,000, which we've covered. And best practice, although it's not a rule as such, best practice is to make sure that you have an investment that you can remain invested in until you have the passport. The last thing that you want is to have an investment that matures after 3 years, for example, and find yourself being unable to renew your visa. Likewise, you don't want to be tied into an investment for longer than you need to be. There are some investment funds that will tie up your capital for as long as 14 years. So a bit of a balancing act between the two, but other than that, as long as the fund meets those 4 rules, you're good to go. Some basic housekeeping, if you are starting to do some research on investment funds, first and foremost, always be crystal clear on exactly what the level of security is for your investment capital. If you take the Golden Visa out of the equation, I think it's fair to say Portugal as a whole probably isn't the first country that you would think of investing into. Not that there's any problem with investing into Portugal, but the financial system in Portugal is not as robust, shall we say, as the likes of the US or the UK. It's certainly a lot better than it was, just 10, 15 years ago. But there are many investments which might qualify for a visa, but have an exceptionally high level of investment risk. So you want to be very clear. Make sure you have a clear breakdown of exactly what the investment is, what happens if things go wrong, is it a genuine investment, is there a track record, is there any form of kind of further security, is there any collateral held as a security. But that's really got to be first thing. That would be the first thing on my shopping list as far as security for the capital. You do not want to have the visa costing you €500,000. As we mentioned before, be mindful of how long your investment is tied up for. Some fund managers will charge a penalty to withdraw the capital early, sometimes anytime, as I say, up to 14 years. Realistically, you're going to need at least 6 years, hopefully not too much longer than 5 or 6 years. And you don't necessarily want to be bound by the Golden Visa investment rules if you don't actually have a Golden Visa at that point, and you've got your passport. Be mindful of fees. Portuguese funds are quite kind of notoriously expensive compared to some parts of the world. Setup fees, management fees, exit fees, make sure you have a clear understanding of exactly what the fees are. What is the investment risk? Of course, we've covered. If you are from the US, make sure that the fund is compliant for use with reporting back in the US. And not all funds are particularly friendly, shall we say, for reporting back to the US, which is necessary as part of FACTA. So yeah, important thing to factor in there from the US. And where you can, always ask if there's any additional incentives. Often, when we're looking at different investment funds, there may be the option for, discounted legal fees or complimentary stays in Portugal, things like this. So yeah, just some basic housekeeping there if you are doing your own research. Otherwise, there are no restrictions on what industry to invest into in Portugal. These are some of the more prominent sectors. You'll hear me talking a lot about the tourism and hospitality sector for a number of reasons, but there's no restrictions on what you invest into as long as it meets those rules. As far as fund managers, again, you can invest with any fund manager. Holborn, we're not tied to any particular investment provider. During a one-to-one meeting, we can review all the different investment funds that are available at any one time. And I can provide you with the key facts and the necessary brochures and costs and things to help you make a decision on what is the most suitable type of investment fund. They come in all different shapes and sizes, from low risk to exceptionally high risk. I've said it before and I'll say it again, the most extreme examples I've had clients ask me about is I've had the option of investing into Portugal's next big theme park. There is the option to invest into a movie production. Very unique, very specific investment options, which could be very profitable. Not that I know anything about the film industry as such in Portugal, but naturally, if the film is a big success, it could make you very rich. If it's a big flop, then it could be a very expensive visa. But in the main, the vast majority of clients are generally looking for something more traditional. But again, investment funds do still vary in costs, in performance, in risk, in returns. Some funds target over 10% per year. There are, as we've looked at, there's 1 or 2, 3 fixed investments for those that don't necessarily want the pressure or stress of their investment going up and down for the next 5 or 6 years. A fixed return, it can be done with around about 4% per year as a return. And there are some investment options that do have some form of collateral as well, some kind of further security in case of any worst case scenarios, which is a nice add-on as well. But otherwise, yeah, for now, like I say, if it is something that you want to dig deeper into, you can book some time in and drop me an email, and we can do a Zoom meeting and go through any personalized questions that you have. We can look at the different investments that are out there and, of course, answer any questions that you may have. I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of what can be done. As a couple of examples, just before we move on to some questions, this is one example of a fixed investment that I alluded to earlier, whereas you can invest into a Portuguese company that will create jobs here in Portugal, and you will receive an upfront fixed return of 101,000, which can be used towards the 500 that has to be invested for the visa, which allows the investor to qualify with just 399 of their own money, and it has a guaranteed exit from year 6 of 500,000. In its simplest form, you have 399 that goes in and 500 that comes back out in the future. Nothing fancy. It's not based on the stock markets or performance in any way. It is just a family-friendly, predetermined, sleep easy at night type investment. There are some loan facilities available as well, whereas you can qualify with as little as 325,000 of your own capital. And there is a form of, like I said, there's a physical asset held as extra security as well. And yeah, a nice example of an add-on is a complimentary stay for investors in Portugal for 4 weeks every year. Just right near where I live in this example. But yeah, very typical fixed option. If you want to be more adventurous and target bigger returns, there are there are a number of performance-based equity and venture capital funds to choose from. One example with Portugal's largest fund manager, currently managing over 4 billion euros, a fund that invests generally into tech and AI, and been around for some time. The fund manager's been around for over 30 years. Targets returns of 10 to 14% per year, and actually has a good track record of achieving those returns in recent history as well. But of course, things like this do not come with a guaranteed return. The value can go up as well as down. But if all goes well, it could be more profitable than if you have a fixed investment. But all in all, best advice I can give you, very handsome picture of me there, and of course on any of the topics that we're covering, before making any big moves, speak to an expert. Good help is hard to find these days, and of course, being here locally in Portugal, I've now done over 300 applications personally, just in the past couple of years. Actually, I've heard it all, the good, bad, and the ugly. But yeah, of course, please feel free to ask any questions, which we're actually going to come on to in a second as a slide to finish. For those that watched in April, you'll be pleased to know that we're going to extend the complimentary offer, exclusive for those that have registered for this webinar. You can actually have now a Portuguese language course included as part of your application, free of charge. So any applications basically any applications that we start before the 30th of May, can request a full Portuguese online course to pass that A2 language exam. I just need to make sure you make a note of that code on the screen there. And yeah, of course, if you've got that now, great. It will be, of course, posted up to YouTube shortly. But yeah, little thank you from me. Otherwise, thank you for listening. For any further information or any questions that you have, you can now log on to www.jsprive.com, where you'll find all the up-to-date news and latest information that you need on moving to Portugal. Thank you much for watching, and we'll speak to you soon.